Hi everyone! Welcome to another Ashtown Creations tutorial. My name is Stephanie, and in this video we are making the Vignette foam crossbody bag by Hold It Right There patterns. This amazing little foam bag features two slip pockets, one on the back and one in the front, and the front one has two little card slots. It also has a main compartment with a slip pocket. The flap closes with either magnetic or heavy-duty snap to keep your items safe. It has two connectors on the back for the crossbody strap, which keeps it lying flat on your body. This is a fairly quick sew, and I am already looking forward to making more. For this specific bag, the exterior main panels are quilting cotton that I've had in my stash for a while. I can't remember where I got it or when. The base top and flap are black cork from Cork Supply. The black seatbelt webbing is from Zipper Valley. The matte black hardware is from Atelier Fiber Arts, and the lining is a lightweight waterproof canvas from Mimi's Fabrics. I will add all the links to the patterns and all the materials in the description box below. I will also add the timestamp so you can jump to the section that you need. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and select the notification bell to be notified when new content is available. Please leave any questions or comments in the comment section below. I will do my best to respond as soon as I possibly can. Thank you to Susanna from Hold It Right There Patterns for allowing me to record this tutorial for you. So stick with me to see how this bag is made. Let's go through the pieces for this Vignette foam crossbody bag. So my piece A, the exterior top, front, and back, I am doing a black cork, and I have two pieces, so front and back. For the lining, the slip pocket lining inner layer, so piece B, I've got two layers of a waterproof canvas. It's not OtterTex, it's thinner than OtterTex. And for the slip pocket exterior front and back, piece C, I have two pieces. This is a quilting cotton interfaced with a woven interfacing, and I have two pieces, and I have already marked and cut my spots for the magnetic snap, put some fray check on it, and have set that. So piece D, the slip pocket lining outer layer, is this waterproof canvas, two pieces. The flap E, or the piece E, is the flap. I have two pieces, is black cork, and I already have one marked for the snap, magnetic snap. And I also have a piece of Peltex to put in the flap to as a stabilizer. Down here I've got the card slots. This is not in alphabetical order. So I've got two pieces for the card slot. I've got the quilting cotton interfaced with the woven interfacing and a waterproof canvas. For my base, piece G, I have the base cut out of a black cork, and I have it marked already, and I also have a piece of Peltex for the inside, like the bottom stabilizer piece. So now the bag lining at piece H, I have two pieces of waterproof canvas, and the lining pocket, I guess this is a slip pocket. Piece J, I have quilting cotton interfaced with a woven interfacing and waterproof canvas. As far as hardware goes, I have a magnetic snap. My hardware is matte black. So I've got those. I have two pieces of Decaville Heavy for the back of the magnetic snap. I have my Ashtown Creations bag label. It's done in cork. I have two little pieces. So the pattern comes with instructions to make your own fabric pieces. For this, I have decided I'm going to go with, this is a seatbelt style webbing. So I've got two pieces for that, and the two D-rings that will get attached to these. And then the crossbody strap, I'm using the same webbing, seatbelt webbing, all of it's in black. And then the matte black hardware, the slider, and the swivel hooks. And these are 1-inch hardware. So that's all of the pieces for the Vignette foam crossbody bag. Let's get sewing. Okay, the first thing we need to do is put the magnetic snap on the flap. So I can put aside my Peltex for now and put aside one of the flap pieces. So for the magnetic snap, it will have the outside piece, the exterior piece will be nothing on it, but the inside piece will get one of the snaps on it. If you're doing the other snap, spring snap or whatever, you can go ahead and put these two together and then put the hole right through both pieces. But for the magnetic snap, we don't. We only put it in one. So I'm going to put one aside. I'm going to grab my little cutting mat, and I have marked, I don't know if you can see it, but I have marked through, like, the pattern piece itself has a hole, so, or has a spot marking for where we're to center the snap on. So I copied that over. I took the washer for the magnetic snap and I placed it centering this hole over the dot that I placed from the pattern piece. So now I want to go and mark either outside line. So there's two lines, one on either side. Then I take my craft knife and I make marks. I cut all the way through. There we go. So we want to, so for the flat part, we want to take the male part of the snap. So the male's the one that has the little nub sticking out. So I'm going to take that and from the front side, put the magnetic snap in, flip it back over. Take a piece of, this is Decaville Heavy. I'm just going to reinforce the snap with that. Press the Decaville Heavy down on the prongs. So I have two little divots in there telling me where I need to cut my holes. So I'll cut according to those. Place the Decaville Heavy over top. Take a washer, put it over top of that. And I need my scissors to press, and I'm going to press the prongs out to the side. Either side. There we go. One last thing before we're done with this, I'm taking some duct tape and I'm going to put a piece of duct tape on the back of this magnet so that the prongs don't rub through the other piece of cork that I will be putting on. So there, we got duct tape on. I'm going to flip it over and kind of press it on. There we go. Okay, let's sew these flat pieces together. So it's a little difficult to see because I'm using black cork, but we want to put the right sides together. So I'm going to put the right sides together. I'm going to match it all up. Grab some clips. I'm going to clip across the top because that's going to help keep it in line, keep everything even, but we're not sewing across this yet. We're just going to sew down the sides around the bottom or around this end and then back up. Right, so I've got it on a joining stitch length and I'm going to sew, as I mentioned, down, around and up with the recommended seam allowance. Back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam. Right, now we're going to trim close to the stitching. I am going to just reduce it down to about 1/8 of an inch. I'm using my pinking shears. Don't really need it on the sides, but around the curve. It's a gentle curve, but it still will help out with the curve. So anyways. Now that we've got this trimmed, I want to flip it right side out. So I'm going to open it up, stick my hand in, push the end into my hand and pull it through. I'm going to take one of my pens. If you have a turning tool that works for you, then I would go ahead and use that. Got it turned, and now I'm going to take some clips. My flat ones would have been ideal, but they aren't here right now. Now we want to take our firm stabilizer, mine happens to be Peltex, and I'm going to put it inside. So remove all the clips I just added. And slide it inside. Now I'm going to purposely try and keep, I don't know if you can see it, the seam allowance on the back side of my Peltex. So it kind of slides in front of it. So make sure at the end that it's behind the Peltex as well, or on the bottom. All right, I can feel the Peltex in the end. There we go. All in there. Now I'm going to put a couple clips in, and then I will stitch around it with the recommended seam allowance. It's a top stitch. So I've got it set to a 5 stitch length. And now I'm going to top stitch just around the sides we just sewed. There we go, the flap is all top stitched. So set it aside for a minute while we take our D-rings and add our little connectors. So if you don't have pre-made webbing like I do, you'll have to make up your little connector tabs as per the instructions. Since I have it, all I need to do now is take my D-ring and pick which side I want to be the wrong side, and I put the flat side of the D-ring to the wrong side, and I am going to just put a clip. Do the same for the other one. Okay, so now we want to add the D-rings to the flap. So we want to flip it so that the exterior of the flap, so the magnet, for me, the magnet's on the interior of the flap. So for the exterior of the flap, I'm going to be taking one of the D-rings. And if it helps, you can stitch across to keep them together. Actually, I think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to quickly stitch across, and then we'll continue. One of the things with working with webbing, it can fray. So if you have a lighter and melt the ends, then it's less likely to fray. It can still happen, but it's taking a precaution so it doesn't fray. Anyways, I'm going to take one of my D-rings and I'm going to put it on the outside of the flap, matching the side of the D-ring connector and the top, and clip it in place. Do the same for the other side. So again, right against the edge and right against the top. Put them in place. Now we're going to stitch them on. So I'm putting it at a 3.5 stitch length, stitching them on with the recommended seam allowance. I'm going to start in a little bit because it can be a little bulky on the outside. So I'm starting in a little bit, and I will back stitch, and then I will come over and do this one. All right, we've got the D-rings on. We can set this aside for now. All right, it's time now to sew up the card slots. So I have my exterior of card slots and my lining piece of the card slots. I need to take them, figure out which side I want up, and then put them right sides together. I'm going to clip around. Actually going to clip all 4 sides just to keep it in line. And then I'm going to take my air erasing pen and I am going to mark an opening, a spot for an opening at the bottom. And yeah, I follow the measurements in the instructions. So because we're going to leave an opening in here, we're going to turn it through this opening and then we'll close it up after. So I'm going to start, so I've got it on a joining stitch length. I'm going to start at one side here. I'm going to start here, go all the way around and end here, back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam, and also at the recommended seam allowance. One note, the seam allowances do keep changing in this pattern, and she does mark on every step what seam allowance needs to happen. All right, now we're going to trim up the seam allowance. So if it makes it easier to figure out what the corners are, or figure out, you can take a ruler and you can mark out your seam allowances on all sides. Then you know exactly where you need to turn. I was following along. I can't always tell how far away from the end I am and whether I need to turn or not. So if it helps, you can draw them out with a ruler. So now I'm going to cut in where we've made our mark. I'm going to cut in a bit close to my stitch line, but not cutting through it. And I'm going to turn, and I'm going to just take the seam allowance off all the way around. All right, and now I'm going to flip it right side out. So I'm sticking my thumb in the hole. I'll go to one of the corners, and my thumb is in the corner, and I'm just going to use my thumb and forefinger to push that corner through to help start pulling it through. So then I'll stick my fingers in again, and I will go for the other corner and try and poke it out. You want the corners as nice as possible. I'm going to go find a tool that I can use for this, and I'll be right back. At one time I had a chopstick, but I ended up breaking it. So now I just use, this is one of those, I can't remember what they're called, but it's the star screwdriver. So it's got a little pointy end. We don't want to go right through. So gently poke those corners out. I'm going to roll it between my fingers, and I'm going to use some of my flat clips to hold it. I want the edges all nice and flat. Go all the way around. And now I'm going to take my fingers, push them into the corners. So I'm pushing this fabric back into the pocket we just created. Pull it and try and even up the fabrics so that we can close up the hole. And then I'm going to clip it. All right, and now we're going to want to top stitch just down from the top edge, and we'll use a top stitch. So I'm using a number 5 stitch length, and we'll use the top stitching length as per the pattern. There we go. And now I'm going to find the center, take all my clips out, find the center without that coming apart. I'm going to take my Choco pen, and I'm going to mark the center there. I'm going to get a ruler. Do I have the top marked up here? And I'll mark a line all the way down the center. Don't know. All right, it's time to find your slip lining or slip pocket lining inner layer, which is piece B. Take one of them. We need to find the center of the piece, so fold it in half, find the center, mark the center, and then we're also going to mark according to the pattern so far down from the top. We're going to take our little pocket card slot pocket piece, and we want to lie it down along that line, centers matched. So if you've got quilting cotton or something that can be pinned, go ahead and pin it. I don't, and I want to make sure that it stays even. So I'm going to take a little bit of Wash Away Wonder Tape. Now, Wash Away Wonder Tape, if you've never heard of it before, is a double-sided tape that you can just take a little bit of water and a toothbrush too, and it will come off. So for bag making, this works to wash off. Otherwise, if you're using it for clothing, when you just throw it in the laundry, it'll wash away. Hence, wash away wonder tape. So I'm going to flip this over, and I'm going to clip off a bit, and I'm going to put it at the top here. And then I'm going to put another piece at the bottom to hold, because I really don't want it slipping. And I've already attempted this once, and it slipped on me. This waterproof canvas is a little on the slippery side. So peel the paper backing, get it to stick, and then peel the paper backing off of the tape. Center it over your markings, and even with the line we've drawn from the top, down from the top. So you want it centered on the panel piece, as well as centered, as well as right on the line. My wash away wonder tape's a little old, so center there and there. And then I'm going to push, and hopefully that holds it in place while I'm stitching it. And now we're going to stitch around with the recommended seam allowance. We're top stitching, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. I'm going to start at this side, come down, go up the center, back, and then up the side. All right, so the line that I drew across here was done in an air erasing marker, and this is just a chalk pen. So the one thing I want to do here, if I can, I'm going to try and peel off the wash away wonder tape. That way we don't even have to wash it. There we go. Credit card slots are installed. It's time to move on to the next step. All right, go ahead and find your piece A. So you're going to have two pieces, and there's measurements in the pattern that you need to measure down from the top side of it. So the top side is more narrow than the bottom side, and you want to put your marks on the left and right for both pieces at that measurement specified. Go ahead and set aside one of the pieces. We want to take our lining piece that we just put the card slots on, and one of these exterior or top pieces. And now we want to flip the top piece and right sides together with the lining piece. Grab some clips, clip it on, and now we're going to sew it across with the recommended seam allowance. This is a joining stitch, so I'm putting it on a 3.5, and I will backstitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. All right, we want to flip the top part up and let the seam allowance go down towards the bottom here. So seam allowance is going away from the top. It will be underneath the lining piece. And we are just going to top stitch across that. I'm going to quickly change my thread because I really don't want black top stitching on this. I'll be back in a minute. All right, thread has been changed, so now I will top stitch along this edge on the lining piece, not the top, but I want to make sure that the seam allowance goes towards the lining piece. And I've got it on stitch length of 5. All right, this is done. We can set this aside for now. All right, go ahead and find your second slip pocket lining inner layer piece B and your prepared flap. And we're also going to need our second piece A. So we want to find the centers of the flap and the piece. So I'm just going to go turn it or match it up, match the sides, find the centers. I'm going to put a snip in it. And then I'm also going to find the center of this piece. I'm going to actually put a little snip in it this time. So got the centers marked. I want to put the flap right side down. So exterior side down so that the D-rings will be in between the lining piece and the flap. And I want to match up the centers. So I want it centered across the lining piece, the flap. Just like that. Now I'm going to stitch across just the flap piece with the recommended seam allowance. Now we want to take the remaining piece, A, and we want to put it right sides together, bottom edge of A to the top edge of this sandwich. So just like that. I'm going to clip it on. And we're going to sew this together with the recommended seam allowance. So I'm switching my stitch to a 3. I probably should have done that when I was stitching the flap on, but it should be fine. And needle down, back stitch, beginning and the end of the seam. But I got quite a bit of bulk right here with these D-rings and the flap and everything. So I'm going to take, this is some fabric I got with my machine. I use it instead of a hump jumper. So I just want to get the presser foot up a bit. I might have to go up a notch. There we go. All right, now we're going to take this piece and we want to fold the flap and piece A up so that the seam allowance is going down towards the lining part. And we're going to go along and top stitch this. So 5 stitch length. All right, we've got this all top stitch. We can set this aside for now and move on to the next step. Now it's time to add the magnetic snap to the exterior front slip pocket. So I can take that off. I have 2 pieces. I've already marked one of the pieces, so sort of like what we did on the flap, only there's measurements in the pattern. I measured down according to the pattern. I found the center of my piece, marked down, put a dot in the center of my piece, took the washer like I did for the flap, marked either side. I cut it with my craft knife, and then I put, because this is quilting cotton and it can fray, I put some fray check on it, and then I set it with the iron. It's still a little crustier than I expected, but it'll be fine. It's behind a magnetic snap. So now we want to take our magnetic snap. We already used the male on the flat portion. So now I'm going to use the female snap, flip my fabric over and insert it into the holes that I've created. So there we go. Like we did for the flap, I'm going to take my piece of Decaville Heavy, press down on the prongs to create the little indentations telling me where to cut. And then I'm going to cut. Take my piece back, put the Decaville Heavy on the back, take my washer, put it down, and spread the prongs out to either side. Also going to take some duct tape and put it on the back. And the reason I flip it over to press it down is so that I'm pressing the fabric onto the tape instead of pushing this in around the tape so that it pulls it to the back. In my mind, it makes a difference. I don't know if it actually does, but that's what I do. So now we've got the magnetic snap on the exterior front piece. We can put this aside. Right, go ahead and find your slip pocket lining outer layer and slip pocket exterior front and back. We're just going to be working with one of each for now. so the other ones can come out and be set aside. We're going to start with the one with the snap, where we've put our snap on it. So I'm going to put this down, and then I'm going to put the lining piece right sides together and match it across the top of both. Grab some clips, clip it together, and now we're going to stitch it together with the recommended seam allowance. So it's a joining stitch, so I have a 3.5 stitch length, and I'll back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. Now we're going to flip this so that the wrong sides are together, and we want a nice even, we want the seams to be flush. So push it up nicely. Roll it between your fingers if you need to. I'm going to go this way. If you have an iron handy, iron it. There we go. Now I'm just going to put clips along. There. And we are going to top stitch this piece. So setting a 5 stitch length. And there we go. Do the exact same thing with the other 2 pieces. Now we want to grab our card slot piece and the piece we just did and top stitched that has the snap. And we want to line up the top edge in line with these marks that we added to the top piece earlier. So I'm going to put that together, and then I'm going to clip it. So keeping everything lined up, we want to take this exterior part, so then the one with the snap, I'm going to pull it back, and it's going to show us the lining side. So we've got these 2 lining panels here. We need to join them together. So I'm going to move my clips out of the way just for a bit. Actually, clip this to the, make sure it stayed lined up. Yep. And now I'm going to clip these up here, and we are going to stitch with the recommended seam allowance, starting at this spot here on this side, and we'll go down, around, and back up with the recommended seam allowance. So joining stitch, I've got a 3.5. All right, we can set this one aside, and we're going to grab the other 2 panels. So this is the one without the magnetic snap, and this is the one with our flap. So we'll grab these 2, and we're going to do the same thing. Exactly the same thing. So I'm just going to match it up and clip. Actually, I'm going to clip just, we need this up there, so I'm just going to clip there. I'm going to flip this part up. We'll do exactly the same thing, and then we'll move on to the next step. Now we want to grab our base piece G. So I'm going to put it, oh, I guess I needed to do it on the right side. So right side's up. I need to mark the center of this notch piece. So there are measurements in the instructions. I'm just going to fold it in half and mark what looks to be the center. You can mark it with a pen. You can put tiny snip in it. I just have my Choco pen right now. So there, we want to mark on either side. And now we want to take the piece that we did with the snap and take the base piece, and we're going to put them right sides together at the bottom of the exterior panel. So not this part we want to go with, in my case, it's quilting cotton. So I'm going to clip it across. All right, now that we've got this attached, we're going to sew across the end we clipped with the recommended seam allowance. I've got it on a joining stitch, and I'll back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. Now I'm going to flip the base up so that the seam allowance goes up towards my cotton print. So the exterior piece with the snap, it's going to go up that way, and we're going to top stitch. So set it on a 5-stitch length for me, and we will top stitch along the exterior panel, not the base. And there we go. We will grab our other piece and do exactly the same thing, attaching the base to this side, and then we'll come. All right, your vignette bag should look something like this. We've got the 2 pockets here and the flap and everything. Now we're going to join the sides together. So we're not going to stitch these, we're going to just stitch the exterior pieces. I want to make sure that my seams down here match up, because that'll make it look nice. We can adjust stuff if it's off a little bit at the top, but we want these to match up. So I'm going to clip them in place first. I'm just going to put a couple more clips in to make sure that it holds it. So now we'll work our way up to here, and I want to match where we overlap onto the top piece. I want to make sure that these 2 seams match up, or seam lines match up. So I'm going to clip those and clip above and below, and use really strong clips because there's a lot going on in here right now, and then clip in between. And then I'll flip over and do the other side. Now we're going to stitch up either side with the recommended seam allowance. I've got a 3-stitch length, or 3.5 stitch length. And I'm going to start from the bottom because I want to make sure, and I'll start from the bottom and then I'll flip it over and start from the bottom on that side. I want to make sure that these spots that I've purposely tried to match up stay matched up. So I'm going to start from the bottom, and I'll back stitch at the beginning and the end of the seam. It's a little difficult when the clips get in the way. And use a piece of fabric or a hump jumper if you need to get up. So it does look like we are supposed to have these pockets down, and we will catch them in the seam allowance up further. All right, I'm going to flip this over and do the same thing from the other side. All right, now it's time to box the corners. So I'm going to find the inside of my bag, stick my hand in so that, you know, I can poke my finger out, and then I'm going to grab this side and try and flatten out the bottom, spread the seams, and line up the line we drew before with the center of with the side seam. And then we want to make sure we got it right over to the sides, and then we're going to put some clips in it. Spread, pull this, yeah, sometimes if you pull these out and then slide it down, it might work. Spread this out and then put some clips in it. We want to make sure that the side seam is lined up with that mark. go ahead and do the other side, and then we'll move on to sewing. All right, the cork is a little tough on my hands, but I think I've got it. The edges don't match up completely at the top, but what really matters is we've got the side seam in line with that mark we made, and that up where the seam allowance is, it's flat and even. So I'm going to actually move these around a bit, get it under my needle, and we are going to stitch it across, joining stitch with the recommended seam allowance. And I will back stitch at the beginning, the end, and probably across the middle. Although this is a smaller seam, I think I want it done there too. And repeat for the other side. Okay, I've stitched both sides. I'm going to take scissors now, and I'm going to cut across the seam allowance close to the stitches, but not through the stitches. And now we're going to turn the bag right side out. So reaching down in the center, pushing it into my hand, and then pulling it out. Poking out all the corners. And then I grab it, pinch it, and wiggle it a little bit to try and help it form a nice crease. Go from side to side. Okay, now we can set it aside for a bit and move on to the lining. Okay, before setting aside, one of the things I forgot to mention was, is we need to trim down these side seams. So I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors and trim them down to about 1/8 of an inch. I'll do it for both sides, and then we can set it aside and move on. Just be careful not to trim your stitches. Okay, moving on. All right, grab your lining pocket pieces, letter J. And I've got two. I've got one cotton and one waterproof canvas. And we're just going to put them right sides together. And it's a square, so it doesn't really matter what direction, unless you have directional fabric. So right sides together. At the bottom, we're going to do the same thing as we did for the card slots and mark an opening so that we can turn. And we will be sewing between those marks. So I'll start here with the recommended seam allowance, go all the way around and back here. Again, I should have marked my corners so that I could make a better turn. Now we're going to grab our scissors and we're going to trim the seam allowance down to about 1/8 of an inch, just like we did on the credit card slots. And now we're going to turn it right side out. So sticking my thumb all the way into the corner again, thumb and forefinger. And again, using my screwdriver to push at the corners. You don't want anything too sharp because you don't want to poke it through the corners. Fingers in the corners here and tuck the seam allowance in. Finger press. I'm going to grab some clips and I'm just going to clip the bottom this time. Again, if you have an iron nearby, you can go use your iron to get nice crisp edges. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch this. All right, so number 5 stitch length, and I'm going to back stitch at the beginning and the end. Now we want our bag lining pieces, at least one of them. They're letter H. And I've already gone ahead and done it on this one, so I'm going to set the other one aside. We want to find the center So you can find the center and mark it with a pen, clip it, whatever. So I found the center and I marked down according to the instructions. And now I want to add the slip pocket. Oh, we need to find the center on the slip pocket too. So I'm going to fold it in half and mark it with my Chaco pen right there. Not sure if that's showing up or not. Here we go. So I want to add this pocket here. I'm going to match up the center line with the center of the lining and across, and have it follow this line that we drew along. Grabbing my wash away wonder tape, and I'm going to put some across the top and the bottom. Take the paper backing off of the tape, and now try and line up the pocket in the center and along the line, just like that. I'm going to put it under my needle. I'm going to stitch down with the recommended seam allowance, and I've got it on a top stitching length, so I've got it at a 5. And there we go. The pocket has been added. It looks a little, yeah, it's a little off. So even with the wash away wonder tape, it's still slipped. It's inside, so hopefully nobody notices. So I'll take that wash away wonder tape off. Now I'm going to grab the other lining piece, and I'm going to put them together, right sides together. Probably don't need to find the center, but I'm going to anyways because we'll need it when we go to add the lining to the exterior. So I'm just going to match it up from the top, grab some clips so that I can keep it even all the way around. All right, back on a 3.5 stitch length, I'm going to stitch around at the recommended seam allowance, but I'm also going to put in an opening on one of the sides. And I'll follow what they say in the pattern. So I'm not going to stitch between those spots, and I will turn the bag out through that hole. So I'm going to start at the top here, and then we'll skip over and come down. So I'll do this seam, then across here, then up the sides, back stitching at the beginning and the end of the seam. I'm going to trim my threads there and where this opening is. But I'm going to leave the little ones in the corners. I can take these clips off now. Now we want to box the corners. So just like we did on the outside, I'm going to stick my hand in. There's not much space here. And I'm just going to butt these up against one another, pulling the sides away. And then make sure that the seams feel like they're on top of each other. And I'm going to put a clip in it. Do the same for the other side. And now I'm going to sew them together, or sew the box corners with the seam allowance as per the pattern. I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to trim down the seam allowances. So box corners. And then I'm going to start down from about an inch, inch and a quarter down from the top, and then bring it down to about 1/8 of an inch. As far as I can go, not cutting my stitches. And on this side, there's really not much to take off because we don't want to take off on the unstitched portion. So we're not going to take anything off in here. I've taken a little bit off the top, but not much. Moving on, we're going to put the exterior inside the lining. And we want to make sure that the side with the flap goes in so that it's on the same side. I guess I have to bend this a bit. At the same side as the pocket on the lining. Before I get it in, I'm gonna find I haven't found my centers on the top. So now that I've done that, I'm going to find my centers on the top and snip them. All right, back into the lining it goes. Remember, flap side. Flap goes to pocket. All right, now we're going to take the top of the lining and the top of the exterior, and we're going to line up the side seams. And I think I'm going to nest the side seams because I took a lot off of this. I'm not sure I can butterfly. I'll try butterflying. So I want to match the side seams. I'm going to put another one in just to be sure. I'm going to come around and match the other side seam. And I missed matching up the top parts here. They're off a little bit, so that means this part is going to hang over just a little bit more, but it's fine. We'll fix it with the seam allowance. We'll hide it in the seam allowance at the top. Now we're matching the center marks. Actually, I should be putting it towards the lining because I'm going to sew, or towards the exterior because I'm going to sew from the exterior. And then we'll just gradually bring it up to meet on this side. So, because we're over a bit here, we'll just gradually blend it in so that it's all even. Okay, there we go. Now we want to sew around the bag with the recommended seam allowance. It's a joining stitch, so I've got a 3.5 stitch length. I'm just going to start in a center spot on the back. Don't want to start in the middle of the front. Hopefully I can pull things out of the way enough and you can see what's going on. Make sure when you stop and move your bag around that you have your needle in the down position. Mine has an automatic needle positioner, so I don't have to think about it as much. But yeah, you need to make sure that your needle is in the down position anytime you go to move your bag. Alright, got that stitched on. Now we need to trim down the edges. I'm just debating on, I think I'm going to run off, I'm going off camera, I'll just run another row of stitching, just one stitch in from this all the way around with black, because this, I can see this through the black cork and I don't really want to. Alright, so I went around and added another row of stitching just inside. Some of it's more inside than the other. The blue line I had before, because I really don't want the blue poking through as much on the top of the bag. So now we're going to pull the bag out. So reach in the side we left open and grab the bottom of the bag and start pulling it through. It should come through pretty easily. And we're going to pop out the corners of the lining. There we go. Make sure everything's pushed out in the bottom of the bag, all the corners. So yeah, I don't like being able to see the lighter color through the black cork. I should have thought of that when I was doing these, but I didn't. So anyways, all right, so there we go. All right, before we go turning the lining inside the bag, we want to kind of get a nice crease in this. If you can iron it, iron it. I've just put clips on it. I need to take the clips off because we need to put some heavy duty stabilizer in the bottom of this bag. So we need to be able to get into the bag. So we'll go in through this side. And I'm going to put This is going to be fun, but we're going to try this. I'm going to put some glue on the back side of this piece. Hopefully I can get it in there without getting it all over the bag. So I got glue on it. I can't, this has it has glue already on it to fuse it, but I can't get down there to fuse it. So we're going to put it in this way. So I need to get it in the bag, maneuver it down to this end, and stick it to this end. You're probably not going to be able to see me do that. So actually, I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to do this off camera so that I can turn around and work on it a little easier to my side. All right, I got it in the bag. It's at the bottom of the bag. I got glue all over the inside. But it's down there. I think it'll stay. I'm just trying to adjust the bottom of these pockets so that they're not sitting weird under the interfacing. So they sit flat. So I got glue all over my hand. Trying not to get it on the outside of the bag. Anyways, so yeah, I'm just trying to adjust these outer pockets so they're not stuck under the stabilizer, the Peltex. All right, there we go. I'm just going to let this set up for a bit, and then we'll move on. Okay, I let the glue set up a bit in the bottom of the bag. One thing that occurred to me while I was letting it set up is I could have probably used double-sided tape. There's enough room in there for me to have put it on the bottom, take the tape off while it's in here, and just adhere the Peltex to the bottom, and it should have been fine. The double-sided leather tape, not the Wash Away Wonder tape. Wash Away Wonder tape isn't strong enough to hold that down there. Now we're going to move on to closing up the side seam. I've got it clipped. I forgot to put a label in, a bag label on the outside, so I'm just going to stick one in the seam. I'm going to stitch this up. I'm going to use my 3.5 stitch length because I want the bag to stay closed, but we're doing it like a top stitch. So get my bag under the needle, and I'm going to back stitch all the way up to the top, back stitch, and then we'll move on. I want to make sure that's in there. Trim my tails. I'm going to take a lighter to catch the stuff that came through from the inside. And now we're going to push the lining back to the inside. So I'm just going to roll it over, push it all the way in, poke out the corners. And I want this edge to match. So I want it to be even inside, outside. I want this to be even. And I'll just go around and clip it. I'm pulling the flap up because when I push it down, the seam in here where we top stitched this down, it wants to flip up. So keep the flap up a bit and it'll keep it from poking out. I'm sure over time that seam will, like this, will get used to bending. All right, there we go. Now I'm going to try, I'm going to end up switching my thread so that I have black on the top and then the blue on the bottom, because I don't really want black in here, although my tension tends to be off on this machine. All right, I don't normally use my cylinder arm as a cylinder arm for tutorial videos, but this bag is for a friend of mine for her birthday, so I want it to look as nice as possible. So I'm going to use it. If you don't have a cylinder arm or a free arm on your machine, then I would recommend turning it inside out. But since I do have it, and this is for a friend, I'm going to use it. So I'm going to top stitch at the recommended seam allowance all the way around, trying to keep the lining to the inside of the bag. I'm thinking I'm going to start on the end here. And I'm going to try and, I've got my tails long and I'm not going to backstitch here. I'm going to try and pull them through later. I still need to hold on to them, so I still need to find them. All right, there we go. Not too bad. Top stitching, not too bad. I forgot to increase my stitch length, so I did it at a 3.5 stitch length instead of 5. Oh well, it's going to be mostly hidden under the flap anyways. So yeah, this will be what it looks like. Clean up some of my threads. All right, so I need to tie off these threads. I'm going to pull them to the back so you can see it popping to the back. Use my stiletto to pull it through, and I'll do the same thing for the other side. There we go. And now I'm just going to take each pair and tie them separately. And I'm going to try to tie it so I'll wrap it over, and then I'm holding the black one out straight and letting the blue one loop around the black one. I'm hoping to tie it over so that the black isn't seen as much on the outside. Now I've done it twice, so now I'm going to find a needle, and I'm going to put these on the needle, and then I'm going to tuck them in here. So put the needle in, and then maybe come out further down. So I hide the threads in behind. So now I'm going to try and do the same thing on this side. I'll do it off camera because it's a little more of an awkward position trying to get the blue thread to cover the black. Now we're going to put the crossbody strap together. So I've got my length of webbing, and it doesn't look like there's any right or wrong side to this, so I'm just going to pick a side and go with it. So first thing we need to do is add the slider. So I'm going to take the strap, I'm going to put it up one side of this center bar and then down the other side. I'm going to pull it through. I'm going to fold it over according to approximately what it says in the instructions, and then I will fold it back on itself again. So that we have this attached. I'm going to put clips in it and we'll sew it in a few minutes. So there we go. So now with that side facing up, I'm going to go over to the other end. I am going to take my, so there it's like this. So I'm going to take the swivel hook and put it on so that it's hanging off the other side. So this is the wrong side. So I've got it on the wrong side. There we go. So now I'm going to take the other end, the end we just put the swivel hook on. I'm going to go up wrong side to wrong side. I'm going to go up the closest side of the slider, over the center bar, and down the other side and pull it. So it should look like this now. I'm going to flip it over so that we have wrong side up again. I'm going to take the second swivel hook and put it on facing down again. So this is the wrong side and this is the flat side of the swivel hook, and I want them to be together. So again, I'm going to fold it over and then fold it over again. So we want the piece, the first fold over, to be touching the swivel hook. So again, I'm going to put some clips in it. You can probably put some, if you don't want to sew it, you can put some rivets in. I'm going to try and sew it and see if I can get as close as possible to the hardware. So there we go. We'll sew this up in a minute. here we go. We're going to stitch these in place. I'm actually thinking I probably should have stitched them first before putting this end on through, so I'll go through this again. I'm just going to take this hardware off. I'm going to stitch this down properly and then put the hardware back on. Alright. There's instructions in the pattern on how to do what is it, square, like the proper square with the crisscross in it. I'm just going to do 2 rows back and forth, and yeah, so I'm at a 3.5 stitch length. And I'll move over so that I'm running 1/8 of an inch away from the other edge, so right along this inner part, and I will do the same thing again, back and forth. Now I'm going to get my lighter and just clean up the threads a bit. Alright, there we go. See, I don't know if you can see, there's 2 lines of stitching. Alright, so I'm going to take this again, face up, or sorry, wrong side up. Come all the way over to the other side. Get wrong side up, put it under my foot. Now I'm going to go all the way over to the other side, and this is the wrong side. You can see it. So I'm going to take my swivel hook, put it on, hanging down, so it's wrong side to flat side, just like we did before. Grab the slider, and then again, wrong side to wrong side, up through one side, and down through the other side. And there we go. So we got the swivel hook on the outside, and now I'm going to go all the way over to the other side, the other end of the strap. I'm going to put the swivel hook on, again hanging down, fold it up, and then fold it over. There we go. And now I'm just going to clip in one spot on this side to hold it while I get in there. And this time I'm going to start on this edge so that I get this close first and there's less chance of it moving. And actually this time I think I might be able to do the box. If I come up. I'm going to start at the bottom. I think I can fit the box in this one. And then work my way up towards my hardware. Don't want to get too close because it can mess up your stitching. You don't want to hit it. And then turn and come down. If you've got the bottom of my presser feet are flat. They don't have teeth on them, so they don't tend to rip my fabric. But if you have teeth on the bottom of your feet and it wrecks things, make sure you put something in to protect your hardware and your strap. Alright, now I'm going to go up to this corner, and I'm only going to put the one line up to this corner in. I don't need both. And there we go. The crossbody strap is done. Going to grab the bag, and I'm going to close it up. This will take a little bit of working in. I think the cork is still pretty stiff. Turn it around, and then I'm going to clip one on each side. And there we go. We have the Vignette phone bag by Hold It Right There Patterns. It's such a cute little bag, and I think it'll be great for my friend who loves to travel. So or even just day trips out. She can use this just to hold her phone and a couple things in it. There's credit card slots, a slip pocket, another pocket. Just hold your phone and a couple things. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to my channel. It definitely helps with the YouTube algorithm when people like and subscribe. And that's it for me today. Hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you again. Bye.